Hi friends, I am at home today working from home and I found a book on my boys' bookshelf that I thought you might like to hear. So I'm going to read it to you today. It is a book called My Teacher Sleeps in School. Goodbye, called Mrs. Marsh. I'll see you all tomorrow. Mrs. Marsh went back into the school and everyone began walking home. I think the teacher sleeps in school, said Molly. I think she stays there all night long. What a silly idea, said Gary. Teachers don't sleep in school. Mrs. Marsh does, said Molly. She's always there when we come, and she's always there when we leave. I think the classroom is her house. Why don't you ask her, dared Gary. I did once, said Molly, and she just laughed and laughed, but she didn't say yes or no. But where would she sleep, said Gary. Where would she eat? Let's look around the room for clues tomorrow, said Molly. Maybe we'll find out. The next day, Gary could hardly do his work. He kept watching Mrs. Marsh and wondering, what if it's really true, he whispered to Molly. What if she really lives here? Pretty soon, Lisa and Jason were wondering too. Where does she keep her clothes? Asked Jason. In the closet, of course, said Lisa, behind the paste and paper. At playtime, when Mrs. Marsh wasn't looking, they opened the closet door. Look, whispered Lisa, a towel and soap and a mirror, squealed Gary. I'll bet she gets dressed in this closet, said Molly. We have a closet in our classroom, don't we? I'll bet she wears funny pajamas, said Gary. And gloppy cream on her face, said Jason. They pictured Mrs. Marsh in her pajamas and couldn't stop laughing. There's some good pictures. Next, they tiptoed over to the play kitchen. I saw her hide 2 bags in here this morning, said Molly. More proof, said Gary in a loud whisper. It's paper plates and napkins and lots of forks and spoons. She must be having company. I see cake mix and eggs in this bag, whispered Lisa. She must be baking a real cake. I think she cooks her supper here every night, said Molly. That oven is only make-believe, said Jason. She can make it work, Molly said. Teachers can't do anything. Then they thought about where Mrs. Marsh ate her supper and did her laundry and brushed her teeth before she went to bed. But where did she sleep? That was still a mystery. Maybe she sleeps on the bookshelf, suggested Gary. Or on the piano, said Molly. They looked and looked, but couldn't find any clues. Then, after lunch, everyone was getting ready for an art project. When Mrs. Marsh was getting in the closet, when Mrs. Marsh was in the closet getting paper, Gary snooped around behind her desk. There's something under here, he whispered. Come and see. A pair of slippers, said Molly. And a pillow. She must sleep under her desk. We never thought of that. I told you so, said Gary. She really does sleep in school. Poor Mrs. Marsh, sighed Lisa. I bet it's lonely here at night. And creepy, said Jason. Then Molly had an idea. Let's leave her a good night snack, she said. And a nice note, said Jason. And something cuddly to sleep with, said Lisa. Gary had part of a sandwich left over from lunch. Jason had saved 6 potato chips for later. Lisa got the teddy bear out of her cubby. Molly was in charge of the note. Surprise, she wrote. We know you sleep here. Good night. Sleep tight. Gary promised to keep everything a secret, but soon the whole class knew. Everyone started giggling and whispering. Mrs. Marsh looked puzzled. "What is going on today?" she asked, but nobody answered. By 3 o'clock, Molly had wrapped up the goodnight package. Then Gary sneaked it under Mrs. Marsh's desk. The next day, everyone got to school early. They could hardly wait to hear what Mrs. Marsh would say. But all she said was, "We're going on a mystery trip today." And she wouldn't tell them where they were, not even a hint. Everyone got on the school bus. They rode and rode. At last, they stopped at a white house with a blue door. "This is where I live," announced Mrs. Marsh. Gary looked at Molly. Molly looked at Lisa. Lisa looked at Jason. Then they followed Mrs. Marsh inside. Mrs. Marsh showed them where she cooked her supper and did her laundry and brushed her teeth before she went to bed. "And this," said Mrs. Marsh, "is where I sleep." "Every night?" asked Molly. "Every night," said Mrs. Marsh. Then she showed them her children's rooms. "You even have children?" asked Lisa. "Yes," said Mrs. Marsh. "They're in school all day, just like you. When my husband and I get home from work, we're all together." "Just like us," said Molly. "Now follow me," said Mrs. Marsh. "I've saved the best for last." She led the class into the dining room, where there were paper plates and napkins from the shopping bag at school. "I've been planning this special treat for the class," said Mrs. Marsh. "Oh," said Molly. "We thought—" "I know what you thought," Mrs. Marsh said, laughing. Then Mrs. Marsh brought out a big cake, and just like Molly's notes, it said, "Surprise!" "I baked this last night," said Mrs. Marsh. "I baked it in my own oven, in my own kitchen. And after that, I went to sleep in my own real bed." Gary gave Molly a poke. "I knew it all the time," he bragged. "Teachers never sleep in school." Molly didn't even answer him. Mrs. Marsh was smiling at her in a special way. "Molly," she said, "would you help me cut the cake?" Mrs. Marsh served everyone a piece with a heart on it. And she saved the biggest heart for Molly. So, if you've ever thought that your teacher's at school all the time, sometimes it feels that way, but we do go home, and I know you all know about my family, so you know I have 2 little boys, and we're at home all the time right now, most of us, and so we're lucky enough to get to work from home and try to teach you from home. And so I miss you, and I know that you're at home too. And I'm going to be reading some more stories to you from home. I am in my little boy's room. This is Raleigh's room right now. This is his room. He doesn't sleep in that crib. He's too big for it, and we just haven't taken it down yet. And this is his little reading corner, and that's his timeout chair. And this is the rocking chair, so I read a lot of books here at home. And this just gives you a little peek of my house. So I will hopefully see you soon. And just know that if you need anything, I'm here for you. I love you.